AM 1480 WLEA.
Assemblyman Phil Palmesano on the show today.
Next on News Talk, AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show with Kevin Doran.
It's Brian O'Neill in for Kevin Doran, on with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Assemblyman, first question. Did you want to say anything on that tragic, horrific shooting of the two New York City police officers?
Oh, I mean, first and foremost, our hearts and our thoughts and prayers go out to the family members of those two individuals who lost their life. Tragedy, total tragic situation. It shouldn't have happened, and you just think about the devastation to their families who lost a loved one, especially this close to Christmas. I mean, it's a dangerous job that they have, and they're there to protect us and keep us safe. Our police officers, and to think of what the tragedy is and what they're going through. Your hearts and prayers go out to the family members of the ones who lost their lives this weekend.
Any thoughts on how the New York City Police Department turned their backs when Mayor Bill de Blasio walked into the press conference on Saturday night?
Well, I think there's definitely some problems there that the mayor is right in the middle of. The police department down there, the members of the police department feel slighted by how the mayor's handled the situation there. And listen, our police officers have a dangerous job, and they go to work every day not knowing if they're going to go home to see their families. And the mayor of New York City is, the chief elected official of the city, and there's a lot of bad feelings there, and it's just, hopefully they can work through that. But I don't see that happening anytime soon from all the reports I'm seeing and hearing. And the mayor's got to remember that there's a professional police force that are dedicated to keeping the residents of New York City safe.
What's your reaction to Patrick Lynch, the head of the New York City Police Union? He's blaming Mayor Bill de Blasio for allowing the anti-police protest to go on as long as they did, and he's connecting the anti-police protest movement in New York City to the shooting of the two officers.
Well, I mean, I don't want to point fingers one way or another, but it's certainly, there's been a lot of rhetoric spewed down there, and a lot of words that have been said and spread that have created a very hostile environment. And it's just unfortunate that our police department, who are there to keep people safe and protect them, it's turned into a really bad situation there. And the mayor needs to really get it together and bring people together, because right now he's losing the support of the police department down there. And I think as a leader, he's got to step up and try to bring people together and solve this problem, because the perception is from a lot of people is that he's against the police department, and I'd like to think that's not the case, but he's got to step up and show that is the case, I think, and he's got some work to do, I would think, down there.
Judge Andrew Napolitano on Fox News criticized Bill de Blasio's handling. He said, that Judge Napolitano said on Fox over the weekend, and this was before the shootings, he was talking about the Eric Garner situation. The judge said that de Blasio should be trying to bring peace to the New York City community, and he was taking sides, and the judge noted that de Blasio may be playing to his base when he does this, the more left-leaning voters of New York City, but Judge Napolitano said that was definitely wrong for de Blasio to be handling the Eric Garner situation the way he did.
Well, I only know the reports I read from what I saw, and but I think the perception from everything I've seen is that it seemed as though he was taking sides, and he left a bad impression with our law enforcement community, who again risk their lives each and every day to go out there and keep the people of New York City safe, just like our police officers, whether in the city of Hornell or whatever community they may be in. They risk their lives each and every day to keep us safe, and the mayor has a responsibility to lead, and you lead to try to stay above the fray and try to bring people together, not further divide. I think some of his actions has certainly led to more of a division than bringing together, which is unfortunate for the law enforcement community and for the people who are suffering, and for the people of New York City altogether.
Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, he's been very outspoken lately. One of the things he said over the weekend, he says it's going too far to blame Bill de Blasio for the shootings on Saturday in Brooklyn, but Giuliani does say that President Obama, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, and the Reverend Al Sharpton did create an atmosphere of anti-police sentiment. Now, Giuliani does not blame them for the deaths of the two officers, but he does say that they've stirred up a lot of anti-police feeling. Your take on what Giuliani said there?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I think you hit it. That he didn't blame anyone for this to be caused, but it's certainly the environment that's been created and continued and has continued to foster and fester has certainly created a very bad environment there for the law enforcement community, for the residents of the city, and I think they need people down there to lead and to step up and bring a healing together, rather than a divisiveness. And the only way you're going to get to do that is if you lead and bring people together and have discussions, rather than just basically almost point your finger and saying this is wrong, this is your fault. There's got to be a better way to do things, and to just do things just because a political base might be asking for it, that's not leading. That's not leading at all. And these guys have to lead if you're going to bring healing to that community, because the New York City is hurting right now, and there's a lot of distrust on both sides. And the only way you solve that is you have people leading, bringing people together.
On a similar topic, but not completely related, Courthouse News is reporting that the federal ban on those who were institutionalized and prevented from having weapons because they were at one point institutionalized, that law has been struck down by a federal court as unconstitutional. Wondering, Assemblyman Palmesano, could that federal court ruling affect the New York SAFE Act, which is a state law?
I think so, and I think, and I'm not a lawyer, and I know there's going to be a process with these lawsuits, but I think that a lot of these are going to get merged together. The situation I read about this one individual, I think, that was brought up was, he, from a long time ago, he was depressed over a situation and checked himself into an environment, and after a month he was released. But that was on his record and followed him all the way through there. I don't think that's the intention of trying to keep people with mental health problems from having firearms. And I think it's been abused probably in numerous occasions. But I think a lot of this is, the SAFE Act especially, it's going to be resolved through the courts finally, I think. Right now it's going to the Court of Appeals, and then it's going to go on from there. I think the federal, the U.S. Supreme Court, I think, ultimately will hear them. But some of these court cases might be merged together as it progresses through the court system, and I think we'll see that some progression here for the next year with the result one way or another.
We're talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano here on the Newsmaker Show on AM 1480 WLEA. Assemblyman, moving on to the state's fracking ban that the state health department sent down from Albany last week. Fred Dicker from the New York Post and Talk 1300, he was here on WLEA as a guest on Saturday morning. Dicker seems to think that one of two things will undo the state's anti-fracking decision. Congressman Tom Reed or people like him in Washington who get the Senate and the House to somehow supersede the state rules, or Dicker also said there will be Southern Tier landowners pushing lawsuits. Your thought on what Dicker says there?
Well, I think, there's certainly a great deal of frustration from a number of people, particularly landowners, certainly a lot of people in the Southern Tier. I think that decision was a bad decision by this administration. I think it was, quite frankly, politically based. I don't think it was based on science. I know they claim it was, but I don't believe it. 35 other states are doing this. The whole point is to have tight regulations in place to monitor and preserve the integrity of what's going on. You could have more lawsuits. I think the issue of taking people's property rights away and their mineral rights is certainly an issue that can certainly be delved into. I'm not an attorney, but I'm sure people are looking at that as an option. The whole issue with the federal government, that's going to be interesting to see where they come from. That I think it might be hard to do that, but I don't know because we even have a Court of Appeals decision, which is kind of ironic. But the state said we can't do it, but the Court of Appeals decision said that happened earlier in the year, said that it would be up to the locality to determine whether fracking could happen in a community. So now, if a community even wanted it, the state's saying you can't do it. So that's an interesting take. I wonder if that's something that could come into play as well. So I don't know, Brian. It's just, but at the end of the day, this is a very frustrating decision, I think, especially for the people of the southern tier, for an opportunity to create good-paying jobs, bring some meaningful tax revenue into municipalities and school districts, and to help foster some more energy independence. Natural gas, people heat their homes with natural gas. It's a cleaner burning fuel. It's used to produce power and electricity, which we need to power our homes, to power our business community. It's just, in my opinion, was a bad decision, and I do think it was politically based. I don't think it was based on the science. I think this is something that the governor is looking to do to position himself, should he run in 2016, to position himself as a left candidate. And I just think it's unfortunate. And the governor's responsible for this decision. He owns it, and to say that it wasn't his decision, it was the people underneath him. I just don't buy it, because he has a lot of control over what goes on in his administration. And the fact of the matter is, this governor now needs to come. Actually, what I've been saying, he needs to come visit people, come visit the southern tier, actually come here. I don't know when he was here. I don't think he's been here since he's been elected down in our area. And if I'm wrong, someone can prove me wrong, but I don't remember seeing it. He's been up into the Finger Lakes, but he hasn't been in the actual southern tier. And he needs to come talk to the leaders here and listen to them, listen to their concerns, and say, what's your plan now here to help improve quality of life, to improve economic development and jobs here for the people here? Because we're hurting, and we had a tremendous opportunity to help the upstate economy, to help the southern tier, and he turned his back on it. And it didn't require any taxpayer money or incentives to do it. Just let it move forward with tough regulations and let the market determine it, and we would have had some success here in our region. But unfortunately, the governor decided to play politics, in my opinion.
Assemblyman, there were a number of health concerns cited in the state health department's report. They mentioned babies and people of other ages having medical problems from drinking the water near fracking projects. The state health department, I talked about this with Dick, I said, they seem to discredit in their report the positive studies about fracking on health, but took without questioning the critical reports that they cited about fracking in the state health study. Do you think the state health study might have some valid points about fracking's effect on health, or do you think that the alleged medical problems from fracking are phony arguments?
Well, listen, the fact of the matter is, Brian, there are 35 other states that are doing this. Do you think that these states will let this process go forward if they felt children were going to be harmed by the process? Do you think 35 other states would let this go forward if they thought it was going to be a danger to the people and the community where they live? I just think this is a political decision. They have studies that have been brought forward, and I know there's been other studies that have contradicted studies. The fact of the matter is, I think you put tough regulations in place with proper enforcement and rules and regulations to monitor. You protect the aquifers, you protect the watersheds, and still put in place a system. Remember, we've been fracking for over 60 years. Over 14,000 wells have been fracked. It's just now we're talking about the high horizontal, the high volume fracking, and it could be done safely. We had the toughest rules and regulations before this process. This de facto moratorium even started back in 2008, and we would have had the toughest regulations after. But unfortunately, the governor decided to play politics with this issue.
I have a friend who's a truck driver for the fracking companies down in Williamsport. This guy is a super hyper uber liberal, and he even says that the arguments against fracking poisoning the water are absolutely ridiculous and unfounded. And he said, it's been around long enough in the states where it exists, and there haven't been any problems.
Right. Well, listen, even the health department, I believe, and I'm going from what I read, said there's no conclusive that this causes the problem. And if you want to talk about liberal, President Obama thinks this is a good thing to do, and it can be done safely and responsibly. But the governor doesn't think so. I just find it mind-boggling, and quite frankly, I think it was a political decision. It was not based on the science. He says he's wanted to base it on the science and the facts. I don't think he is. I think he he got scared. I think there's too many people making a lot of noise. And hey, you're allowed to protest, but you have to do it on the facts. I don't think they had the facts, the science behind them, in my opinion. I think the governor caved, and I think he wanted to keep it away from it and let it go. Because why help the southern tier? And it's just it's very aggravating and frustrating to me, because we had a chance to really help turn this upstate economy around, and particularly in the southern tier, which is where the natural gas development would have been taking place. It wouldn't have been being done around the Finger Lakes. It wouldn't have been doing around the city of Buffalo or the city of Syracuse. It would have been done in the southern tier. But yet you have New York City and these other people come in it. They could come in here and say, "Don't do it here," and the governor listened to them. It's just mind-boggling to me, quite frankly.
We're talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano here on Monday morning on the Newsmaker Show. Going to take a break. When we get back, we're going to talk about Governor Cuomo's plans to make changes to state education, and we're going to talk Common Core, as well as the Assemblyman's stance on pay raises for state lawmakers. Stay with us. Now we're back on the Newsmaker Show here on Monday morning, December 22nd, just 3 days before Christmas. Brian O'Neill on the line with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. If we could talk education now, Assemblyman, your reaction to State Education Commissioner John King going to work in Washington?
Quite frankly, good riddance. I'm glad he's going. I think this was a commissioner that didn't do good for education in our state of New York, from my perspective. He embraced Common Core and just ran it through full speed ahead without looking at the problems and concerns that were being raised by parents, teachers, and students and administrators. He just like the governor, he wrapped his arms around this thing and took ownership of it, and didn't listen to the people at the local level where the problems were being developed. And I think I'm glad he's going, quite frankly. I think this was someone that even when people were coming to him and saying, "We have problems," he's like, "I know better." It was like him talking down to people and not listening. And I don't think we need someone like that running the education program that affects so many children in our state. The education of our children is probably one of the most important things we can provide the people here, our children here. And I think we had a commissioner here that didn't do it the right way, in my opinion. And quite frankly, I'm glad he's leaving. And hopefully we get a new commissioner in there who will listen and not be one to rush things, and make sure we're putting the children of the state first, and listening to the teachers at the local level, listening to the people who are in special education or elementary school, talking about these curriculum ideas, and giving flexibility and control to the locals rather than dictating it from the top down.
Capital New York says there's vacancies coming up on the State Board of Regents. They're the ones, by the way, that control Common Core. And Capital New York is speculating that two things could happen there. One, the governor could push to abolish the State Board of Regents. And two, more Republicans get on the State Board of Regents if Cuomo keeps it going, because Cuomo has an alliance with the state Senate. That's according to Capital New York. Do you see either of those things happen, Republicans populating the State Board of Regents and doing something about Common Core, or the governor abolishing the Board of Regents altogether when the budget comes around?
Well, I think both of those are going to be very difficult to do. As far as the Republicans getting onto the Board of Regents, I just don't see that happening, because to become a regent, you have to be elected by the joint House of the Assembly and the Senate. And that's Sheldon Silver. He has over 100 members in the Assembly alone. He doesn't need the Senate to pass anything. And you saw that last year when we actually put up alternative candidates during the discussion. People actually had education experience, people who actually had backgrounds in special education and elementary education, history of education experience, and they just went through with their own picks. Even the last one who filled the vacancy of the one incumbent who retired resigned at the last minute, she had no background in education. She wouldn't even answer questions about her positions in education or economic. Her background was like a spiritual counselor or something like that. It was ridiculous. So I don't see anything happening to get any Republicans on there. Unfortunately, the board of the Regents is controlled by the Speaker of the Assembly because it requires a joint vote of both the Senate and the Assembly, and the numbers are just in his favor.
On Common Core, do you see anything happening with Common Core as far as the state lawmakers making changes to it in the next legislative session?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I don't think we've gone far enough. We put out our own plan, Brian, that was really detailed, made some really good suggestions, and I think you remember we had those hearings last year throughout the state. There's 11 hearings throughout the state that produced a number of recommendations. We had one in Corning, and 300 people showed up, and 40 people testified for over 5 hours. Not enough people are listening, and there's too much people doing talking. But it's time that we start addressing the concerns and questions and problems that have been being raised by parents, teachers, and students, and deal with the problems that this has caused, and not rush it through like you're like a fullback trying to get through the line as quick as possible. We need to pause and take a break and calm down. I try to say even regarding the fracking, I mean, we took 5 years to make a decision. We finally made a decision because they were concerned about safety and health. But what about our children? I mean, it's okay to rush things through them. I mean, they're our most important people, our asset, our priority. But yet there's people that say, let's just rush this thing through, and it's just unfortunate. And we need to push back and be as vocal, and we'll continue. And I plan on continuing doing that once we get back up there, just like I have been all along.
Final question for you, Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Your stance on pay raises for state lawmakers?
Absolutely opposed to it. Listen, I knew what this job paid when I decided to run for the office back in 2010. I decided to run for re-election again this year, and I knew what the pay was. And to think that they'll come back after the speculation is to come back before we take office to pass themselves a pay raise, I think it's just not the right thing to do. Listen, there are a lot of people hurting, a lot of people who are still struggling, families that are out of work, families that are hurting to pay taxes and property taxes. And, I think we need to be focused in our priorities on trying to help those individuals and those families rather than doing it for ourselves.
Assemblyman Phil Palmesano, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Thank you, Brian.
And ABC News is next here on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.